welcome to Viewer's View with myself, Yolo Tumguelo, right here on Galaxy Universal Network. And my guest today is Phapano Phasha. We will be tackling the issues that we're dealing with regards to South Africa, the economy, the issue of education, and also the issue of land. We also know, just to touch base on the press media brief that was done by the EFF, but we'll just get to filled up as we get along. Welcome, Phapano, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Premier David Makhura had touched base on the issues, which are these 5 priorities when it comes to education, your land, job creation, youth unemployment, and also the issue of etolls, where he had said that he also doesn't like the etoll issue. He would like it to be scrapped. But do we have to wait until they take it to Parliament to deal with this etoll issue? Because South Africans have been complaining about it. Your view on that?
Well, interestingly, Premier David Makhura speaks on behalf of the governing party. So it's rather confusing when you've got a leader of the African National Congress not knowing himself what is the way forward when it comes to etolls. So, I mean, I think his gesture is confusing the nation. And it's for now, I think we should just wait. But the ANC in Gauteng, I think they should not... The thing is, they want to take a posture on etolls because they understand that the electorate is not happy with the etolls. However, you also have national government, to which the provincial government is part of. But the continuation of, the ANC in Gauteng on speaking on this issue, and the premier, because he's representing the ANC, it's not assisting the governing party nationally. Because, as I said, it brings in a level of confusion and there's no consistency. And it really shows that, the head and the neck, they're not working together. So we'll see what happens. But I think what could also happen is that, citizens at times wait for politicians to make decisions.
Yes,
I mean, it's quite interesting that you don't have... I mean, I know that OUTA has dealt with this issue, but I mean, this matter can be taken to the Constitutional Court and let it be tested if etolls are for or against. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But for now, I think, the Premier, as much as he's trying to make inroads, for now, I think he must just park the issue until we see what happens.
Also, talking about that to a point where it's a point where they're not sure, they know that people are not happy about it, there's certain people, but they know very well that the people that really suffer from paying these etolls are not really doing anything, which is, I think it gets to a point where it is dragged. Do you think it will be an issue where we get to a point where these etolls are scrapped for good? Do you think, are we getting there, or we still have to be fighting over and over again when it comes to this issue?
Well, the interesting thing about etolls is that ultimately there's someone who benefits. There are people who have benefited from the etolls, construction companies and various companies. And amidst all of this, you've had, in particular, the poorest of the poor and the working class having to pay for this etolls because you've got people who use taxis, and you've got, the middle class, which is also in debt. They're driving to and fro, and they are hanging by, the thick of things. And our government is just clear that, well, they've got obligations, because there are contractual obligations. So, as I'm saying, there should be, citizens must be able to stand up, take this matter to the Constitutional Court, but to also check the fine lines in terms of the contract itself. What did the Gauteng government and national government sign, which obligates it, so much that at the end of the day, it's ordinary citizens who are affected. Because, if you think about it, politicians, the Premier himself, they get allowances, they get car allowances. So they're not really, they're not really affected. So it's the man on the street who's really feeling the pinch. And the standard of living for ordinary South Africans, everything is going up, unemployment, retrenchment, and all of those things. So it's a very dark period. But as I'm saying, one hopes that ordinary citizens will be able to stand up, take this matter to court, and we see what happens.
Now, he also they had emphasized on the issue of youth unemployment, where they say they've also deployed more than millions of jobs previously, or a year before, if I may say. Also, they're looking to employ young people into the sector of where the government employs them. So they're looking at scrapping or also not giving out tenders anymore. But also regulating this form of saying that the government will be employing young people, it will also affect the tender side. These also young businesses that are coming up. Do you think regulating in a way where they speak to the people that get these tenders to employ young people in order to have a level, or rather a situation where I can say it is both balanced? Because if they decide to be the ones that are employing or giving out these jobs, then the tender side or these other businesses that are private, also that they get to a point where they suffer.
Well, I think it's really an indictment that 25 years into democracy, we're speaking about employing young people. We should be speaking of self-sufficient and self-efficient young people. Young people who don't rely on government, but young people who are able to do with to do for themselves. Yeah. The biggest problem, and I mean, hearing what the Premier is saying, the biggest problem in the country is that we have an education system that produces young people who become a burden to the labor market. Unfortunately, Angie Motshekga, she must account because, her tenure has been the worst. I mean, if you speak of unemployment, we must be asking, why are young people not able to create employment for themselves? Why are young people relying on government? So it's as I'm saying, it's an indictment on government itself because, Premier Makhura is part of government, and it's so disappointing that you have this number of young people, as I said, who have to rely on government. And, when you speak of the tender system, in a way, the tender system has also been parasitic because ultimately it's also about, in fact, it has created elitism. At the same time, it has also created a lot of red tape because what we do know also is that you have to pay, for example, if you want to tender. And at times we know that there's preferential treatment for cadres. So there are many problems. What you need is a people-centered state, a developmental state which will put the needs of the people before anything else, and a government which will ensure that the young people who go outside of school and outside of tertiary education, that is your graduates, they're able to do for themselves, that they don't rely on government. Because even this 1 million jobs, some of these jobs, it's not work it's not work which creates living wage. Yeah, so you're dealing with all of this disjunctures, and I think at the root cause of it all is mainly because our politicians, they're earning millions of monies. Also, they're subsidized, and their families are not privy to the conditions that ordinary people are going through. So, I mean, those are some of the challenges, unfortunately. And again, I mean, I'm just surprised that young people themselves have not taken it up upon themselves to say that, but enough is enough. We are the majority in the country. We are the biggest demographic. Yes. However, we're not benefiting from this so-called democracy. I mean, young people have not really seen the ray of sunshine of what we call freedom. I mean, they're in economic bondage, so to speak. So we can listen to the Premier, but something needs to change, because if you do not deal with the systematical and structural issues, we're going to be talking about unemployment in the next 5 years when the Premier might be gone. So,
now, going back to what you just said, that we'll be going back in the next 5 years, still talking about employment, also still talking about free education. He's been in his tenure for 5 years, and this year is his 6th year. But it sounded like we were still planning on things that still need to be done, not coming to the people and reporting of the things that have been done, the jobs created, and the forward of these things. But what I liked is that he had congratulated Minister Panyaza Lesufi on his great work that he's been doing when it comes to school. Now he's trying to look into the foundation, not just high school, to take it back to primary school and making sure that the foundation is done. And he gave him 100 days to come up with a performance of this school and a plan of looking forward. Do you think this is the right way to do it, and only to start doing it now?
Well, the reason why I paused when you were speaking there is because, well, the great work that MEC Makhura, or the great work that we speak of, Well, I think it should also be quantitative.
Yeah.
Because, yes, Gauteng might be doing well in terms of matric results. However, it has not translated to good work for the governing party, for the ANC. And I'll tell you what. Gauteng has produced a middle class, so to say, which does not even, it's not able to analyze its concrete objective reality. And I'll explain why, or what I mean. You know, you've got a governing party which has produced learners, matriculants. But those matriculants and graduates, in turn, they do not vote for the ANC. Again, it means it's a disjuncture. It means that the education system is not working for the ANC.
Yeah.
It might be working in terms of the numbers, but when you talk about electoral returns, it's not working for the African National Congress. But over and above that, you've got a middle class which is in turn becoming individualistic. Because if you look, for example, at the guiding policy of the ANC in terms of its vision on education, it speaks about people's education for people's power. Now, what that means is that the education system must be able to produce a particular citizen, and that citizen must be shaped in a particular manner so that they can drive a developmental agenda. So it has not happened. That's why if you look at Gauteng, the numbers are going down, the numbers are dwindling, the middle class are not voting for the ANC. So as much as we can speak about the great numbers in terms of matriculants, those people who are benefiting from the education system that is implemented by the ANC are not in turn voting for this. So one might say it's working, but you know, in as I said, in you know, scientific terms, is it really working? And is it working when we look at the, you know, the developmental agenda of the ANC in totality as a governing party?
Well, Phapano, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it, and thank you for those insights. That's it from us, and that was Phapano Phasha, who's a political analyst, giving us a more brief report on what is happening and also on your views. Don't forget to leave comments after, right down on this video, or rather send us or communicate with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much. Until next time.